right, good evening. It is 6 o'clock, so we will get started. We have two hearings and a board meeting tonight. So first up is our revenue neutral tax rate hearing. So we'll do a roll call here. Mr. Carney? Here. Mr. Darling? Here. Mr. Goodman? Here. Ms. Murphy? Here. Mr. Powell? Here. Ms. Wells? Here. And I'm Judy Price. So item number 2, the board will now conduct a public hearing on the 2021-22 revenue neutral tax rate. Anyone wishing to make a comment or ask questions may come forward now.
Or forever hold your tax rate.
Yeah, this also includes board members if you have questions.
We know what.
Okay.
Kevin, I thought you had a question.
Last part, next part.
I'm sorry.
All right, there are no questions for this portion of the hearing. So we do have a resolution to sign for the Resolution 21/22-015 revenue neutral tax rate. So all board members, I'll remind you at the end of the meeting, you do have that to sign.
Mrs. Price, you have to have a
vote
on it. You have to have a motion and a vote.
Okay, no problem. It's just not.
Madam President, I move that the board accept Resolution 21/22-015 revenue neutral tax rate to be forward on for record.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to accept the revenue neutral tax rate hearing resolution. First by Mr. Powell and second by Ms. Murphy. All of those in favor? Okay, 6-0?
No.
6-1.
Excuse me, 6-1? Okay. I'll wake up. Sorry. All right, so that completes the revenue neutral tax rate hearing. 6:02. Okay, and once again, it is now 6:02. We'll call to order the 2021-2022 budget hearing. So for roll call, Mr. Carney.
Go here.
Mr. Darling.
Here.
Mr. Goodman.
Here.
Ms. Murphy.
Here.
Mr. Powell.
Here.
Ms. Wells.
Here.
And I am Judy Price. The next is any comments or questions from the Board of Public. So the board will now conduct a public hearing on the 2021-22 budget. Anyone wishing to make comment or ask questions may come forward now.
It's okay to sit down. I'm used to standing all the time. My name is Kevin Gullett. I live at 909 South 17th Terrace, Leavenworth, Kansas. Been a proud resident of this city since 1992 when I came here for the Command General Staff College. I told Beth, and I want to especially thank her for allowing me the opportunity to look at the budget before this meeting tonight, and she answered a whole bunch of questions that I had, and I tried to get mad about the budget. I can't get mad. I like it. I think she's done an excellent job, and this board owes her a great debt of gratitude, and as long as she's serving as a CFO, I'm confident that we will always be in a good financial position. My reason for speaking tonight, though, has to do with your capital outlay budget. I would like the board to prioritize some items, and somewhere in your top list of priorities would be the Army ROTC program here at the high school. You know, we know all of the great things that they've done, but I'm just going to read just a couple of those. 2017 Raider National Runner-Up. 2018 Raider National Runner-Up. 2019 Raider National Champions. 2021 Raider National Runner-Up. And of course the National Drill Team, our ROTC drill team, is doing great things. Those students that are in that program they have earned a place in our school district. And I'm not talking about that corner of that building and sharing the gymnasium floor with other important activities. I would like to see you all, and I've talked to many of you about this before, but I would like for you to see about carving off a portion of that budget that's in the capital outlay and earmarking that for the ROTC, and it's some kind of a training facility, a facility that they can use and do their drill, do their training, store their gear, and do the great things, continue to do the great things that they've been doing. I know that Matt and Brian could spend their $2 to $3 million very easily, but if they only spend that amount, you still have about $9 million by my estimate by the end of the fiscal year. I know there's other things. I know that the board, the administration will be bringing things, but I would just plead that you would keep in mind our ROTC cadets and a great group of cadre and get fired up for some type of ROTC facility. And I thank the board for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Kevin, do you have any idea what you're talking about? I mean, have you looked at like size, style?
I'm aware that there are some plans that may be pretty robust with first sergeant,
So
we're on it.
Okay,
We're on it, sir.
all right.
but there may be ways to do that, and I would recommend that whatever you do, well, it'd be just like the baseball sports complex where you're able to use your own capital outlay budget and not raise taxes. And even if the financing of it requires some time over the years, you could pay for it out of the capital outlay budget. But I think that's something that we need to get on. We need to get started. This ROTC program is exploding. You're talking about upwards of 350 kids in a good year. And so, and that program will only grow.
Dr. Roth, just what is the size of our high school population right now?
Enrollment wise,
Yeah.
off the top of my head, we're around 1,200. Amy, do you have the exact number?
High school,
Yeah.
It's around 1,200 though, correct?
it's more than that, it's 1308.
Okay, 13. When we counted numbers from, just to follow on with what you've said, when we counted numbers on the number of kids who were influenced by the JRTC program, both within our school district and within the Lansing School District, it was pretty close to 400 kids. Now, when we are influencing through leadership, teamwork, participation, exercise, all those kind of things, I think you're right on the mark. And I hope that as a board, that's what we'll do this year, is consider what we do to make that a permanent part of our school district instead of a partial part. That's 30% of our kids in high school. There just aren't that many other programs. And it's one of the reasons why I personally asked for our sports programs as well. Baseball, 250 kids, maybe somewhere there about software, softball and baseball. So I think it is time for us to look at it. Thank you so much for your...
Well, thanks, sir.
Just as a FYI, one of the things that I've already spoke to Ms. Price about this. I've already spoke to Matt, and I've already had some preliminary talks with architect to get some idea of costs before I present it to the board. So I'm not sure if Mr. Gullett's able to read my mind or not, or maybe First Sergeant has my office bug, which he may. That conversation has already been in the works, and our plan is to have something to the board by October as an idea for cost analysis.
Another question on that, and I know they mentioned, of course, the two teams of drill and the Raider teams. I believe it's probably about 8 or so months ago, we talked here, or just before the end of the last school year, about the shooting team and the potential to having a more refined firing range or ways for them to do that and host the matches better than what they've been before. Do you think that would possibly also be in with those plans?
Honestly, it would have to be dependent upon
just to know I was paying attention. I remember we talked about it once before.
What the risk the board would be willing to take. As Mr. Gullett mentioned, you would have some finance options with some lease purchase type things. You can make it as robust as you want and look at it, or you can scale it back and fundamentally try to cover a lot of ground that encompasses a lot of things that is going on. And that would be something that once we start showing plans as far as what could be, that would be the time that the board and whatever group would want to analyze and look at that. But what conversation has had was something to give the ROTC and the entire program an opportunity. And that's something I've had conversations with for the last 5 years.
Thank you.
I've just offered this an opportunity to look at our district into the future. So there are other things like our career technical education, our just a number of programs where we've talked about changing the way we're graduating kids to college or into something that they can live off of in post-secondary. So I think it's an opportunity to do all that. But without question, one of the things our ROTC group has to deal with is February competitions. And so when you look at their training time, it's during the worst part of our year. And yet we ask them to be ready to go out and be number one right out of the bat. And that says an awful lot. That's an incredible statement to the quality of our kids and their drive, as well as the leadership the RTC department is providing.
Is there any possibility of any DOD funding to support it?
I don't have that answer.
However, I'm sure Matt's presentation on that would be integrated in with the entire 5-year budget for capital outlay. Because much as I would love to drop a $20 million facility on them, we ain't gonna do that. Sorry, First Sergeant.
It's not 20 million, sir.
That's okay. I would like to do it a lot nicer.
I understand, sir. Okay. You know, the other thing too, it doesn't just help the ROTC cadets, but all 1,300 kids within the school, because it benefits everybody. Just because it's ROTC doesn't mean nothing. That whole building would be for the whole school district, or, you know, junior guard or whatever. You know, they come in that building and we don't have to mess with basketball, we don't have to mess with nobody. We're not spending those 8 rifles on that floor. I don't know how much it costs to do those floors every year, $15,000 every year to do those floors. We stay off those wood floors, we stay on the concrete, we save money there in the long run. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, it's not just, sure, we got some of the best teams in the whole country, because we do work hard. But we don't want to step on the other teams within our school district or our high school. I don't like doing that personally. When we have our own facility where it's concrete, we're not tearing up wood floors. We're hitting concrete with our rifles. And we have to spin those rifles to be good. So it's just little things like that. It's like our rifle range is 5 shooters at a time. Thank God I'm not the instructor who runs that, because I would lose my mind. In the new facility, we have 13 firing lanes. And that will open so many doors for those kids. Instead of shooting in the morning at 5:30, shooting after school, or whatever. We put a lot of hours in anyway because we want to win. But that will just help so many things. We stay out of the way of the PE programs. Personally, I don't want to mess with them. You know, if they ever want to use it, great. You want to go climb ropes, great. It's for all 1,300 kids in our building, not just ROTC. That's my goal. Cool.
Thanks, sir. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Madam President, I move to approve the 2021-2022 USD 453 budget.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the 2021-22 budget by Mr. Powell and second by Mr. Darling. All of those in favor? 7-0. Okay. And it's 6:13. We adjourn the budget. Okay. Order for our board meeting. So, for this time, we'll take a roll call. Mr. Carney?
Still here.
Mr. Darling?
Here.
Mr. Goodman?
Here.
Ms. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Powell?
Here.
Ms. Wells?
Here.
And I'm Judy Price. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Dr. Roth, the distribution statement.
Absolutely. It's to prepare every student for success in every classroom, every day.
Mr. Potter, we have no scheduled patron input. Next part is item 9.05, adoption of agenda.
Madam President, I move the adoption of the agenda as presented.
Second. Okay, we have a motion on the floor to adopt the agenda as presented by Mr. Darling and seconded by Ms. Murphy. All of those in favor? 7-0. Okay. First item on number 10 is DECA travel request. Please answer.
Yes.
So while we're waiting for the slides, and you're physically here, introduce yourselves and these are your first slide of information. You can cover that.
Okay, so my name is Maya Wagstaff. I'm the president of the this year.
I'm Ella Berry. I'm the Vice President of Recruitment and Membership.
Okay, I'm Michaela Rohi. I'm the Vice President of Operations.
And yeah, so me and Ella are both seniors this year, and Michaela's a sophomore.
Basically what I do is I take notes and attendance and make sure that gets out to everybody, and when Maya isn't here and Ella isn't here, I help run the meetings.
And so also like this year we're trying out a new thing of having a morning meeting and an afternoon meeting because a lot of DECA students are involved in so many other things. So previous years we've had just a morning one, but we're trying out a morning and afternoon to see how that goes, so that more students can be involved.
So how long have you all been in DECA?
So I've been in DECA for 4 years.
I joined DECA last year.
And this is my second year.
About how many people are in DECA right now?
Like 20.
I'd say around 25 or
25. We've had a really good recruitment year so far, so we've added about 20 new members to our roster. So we're really excited to just get everything going.
Looks like you have your slides.
And then, so yeah, this is Becca. Okay, so today we're just going to introduce us officers and officers who couldn't make it today. Go over some of the goals that we have this year, and then also get approval for the trips that we want to take this year.
So our current officers are Maya Wagstaff as our president, Michaela Herlihy as our vice president of operations, Hannah Payne is our vice president of public relations, Ella Berry, I'm vice president of recruitment and membership, Elena Collins is our vice president of communications, and Jacob Baltazar is our vice president of finance and accounting. That's a new position that we began this year. So he's going to be responsible for managing the accounts of DECA and our 3 student-based enterprises, Pete's Place, Pioneers Perk, and Pioneer Print Shop. So he's going to handle that through QuickBooks, and so that's going to help us stay financially on track and also be able to identify consumer trends.
So we have a lot of goals this year, but one of the biggest ones is to increase membership and make sure that there are leaders for next year. Last year, because of COVID, we lost a lot of members, and we also had a mostly upperclassmen team. So we're really focusing on bringing everyone in, and right now that's been very successful. As we said, we've already brought in over 20 members. And we've also been very focused on fundraising. So the last home football game, we hosted a military appreciation fundraiser where we called it a Miracle Minute, and we raised over $400 for the local chapter of Folds of Honor. So, and it funds education for spouses and children of fallen soldiers. So that's really cool. Also, at one of our future home games, we are going to be hosting a fundraiser for the KU Cancer Survivorship Center, and it's themed as Pink Out, and the Leavenworth graduate Jennifer Clint is actually the director of that cancer center. So we'll be selling t-shirts and having the Miracle Minute for that as well. And then we're also planning a fundraiser for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. So that's in the works, so we're really excited about that. And then along with that, we're also getting prepared for bringing in a lot of guest speakers and helping our new members get a lot of management experience and just like lots of leadership, because most of the officers will not be here next year. So and we are all, the main reason we are here tonight is to talk to you guys about the DECA Power Trip and the International Career Development Conference, which is our national competition.
Yeah, so the different trips that we take this year is, of course, our state competition in March is at Manhattan, Kansas, at K-State. We go every year. This is we work really, really hard to practice for our role plays, which are kind of like interviews. We also do written events, which are like startup business plans. Or when we do the CTE fair, some students write a paper for that. So we work really hard to write our papers and practice in order to compete at state. And then the top 3 and the students' events go to nationals, which is in Atlanta, Georgia this year. So we're also wanting to get approval to make sure that we can go to our national competition because we've worked so hard in order to be able to earn this opportunity. And then also at a national competition, we also have different kind of workshop type conference things, and then as well as we get to talk with colleges and to get different internships and stuff like that. And then, so one of our big trips that we are wanting to take this year is called the Ultimate DECA Power Trip. This is in November at Boston, Massachusetts. So we get to practice another competition before we're going to state. There's college and career expos. Actually, fun fact, the last time I went to one of our conferences, I found my dream school. So DECA provides that at those different expositions. There's also people that are high in their industry that come and just talk to us. For example, one time we had a representative from King's Chicken come to talk to us just about how they market and just how that business was started. There's also different networking events. We have learning labs, problem-solving workshops, all the different kind of workshops that help us as officers be able to run a better DECA chapter as well as lead into the next year. This is just a quick little breakdown of what us as students have to pay in order to go on these different trips and compete. We do fundraising events that allow students themselves to fundraise money in order to pay for their different trips. Because as you can see, it can get pretty expensive. Yeah, so I am really hoping that you guys will approve for us to go to not only our state competition, but as well as the DECA Power Trip and the national competition.
I have a question, if I may, about how many students attend each of these different trips.
So it kind of changes every year. As I said, ITBC, that's pretty much depending on who makes it. We've had, I'd say about 10 students-ish, like an average of my 4 years that I've been participating, that went to nationals. The DECA Power Trip, again, those trips just change. I would say like the past few years there's been again like an average of 10 to 12 students. And then state, we literally bring anyone who's interested in DECA come to state. Even if they haven't had a chance to compete yet, it's a really good opportunity to speak with a judge because they're kind of like interviews, so to get that experience and stuff. So that every year has always changed from like 13 to 20 students, to even 30.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This may be a question more for the sponsor, but I'm okay with approving the concept of them going, but when we see who the sponsors are and exactly how many, and et cetera, would that be forthcoming at a later date?
So for state competition, they do have to compete at some of the local competitions. We're hosting ours in November. They do have to show responsibility. There's some soft skills that I have to see if I'm going to travel with them. One, we are still trying to figure out with the travel plans, and this one's kind of a little ways away, who actually will be sponsoring it with me and what other teachers will be. As you know, all the teachers are working pretty hard right now at the high school, so leaving a space open for a sub is tough right now. So we're looking at possibly some parents this time around. For the power trip, it's for the officers. These students have earned this opportunity. We usually have a 13-state region conference, and we go every year, and I take the officers every year. They had to cancel it because it was in Milwaukee, and they just didn't feel like, they were worried it would get canceled, and then they'd be stuck with hotels. So this is an alternative program that DECA offers. There'll be students and officer teams from all over the United States at this particular one in Boston, Massachusetts. So it was an alternative trip because these students have been denied it for 2 years in a row now because of COVID. So it would just be the officer team. We've been working hard already to raise some funds. It's possible, again, because we're going to miss a day of school, that Miss Hurley has already volunteered to be a chaperone with me because I would never want to just have one adult, because if something happens to one adult and you've got all these kids. So I haven't had a chance to personally meet with her yet to talk with her about the trip, but that would certainly keep us from having to have another substitute teacher. So we're looking at that. We've never really done that before with the students, but I don't have any problems thinking that Ms. Hurley would cause us any problems as a parent chaperone. And I know you guys use parent chaperones for things, so you know, it's a good option. And then ICDC is further out. It's the kids, they have to qualify. It's very difficult to qualify. We have 25,000 students that attend the conference in Atlanta and over 1,000 students that attended at K-State. So does that
help?
help?
The question is, there the normal trip request form would be coming where the...
It already has been filled out and it's been signed as my knowledge, but it's not maybe made it here?
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay.
So
next meeting we see those, and because like I said, I have absolutely no problem with agreeing with the concept of them going.
Right.
It's just I'd like to get a warm fuzzy on all the details.
Yes.
Like who's this other sponsor with you, et cetera.
So one of the things we could do, Mr. Darling, if the board approves their trips, if they go before a board meeting and it's not ready, we could always do an FYI or a board on their request and get it to you so you know who's going and can kind of track that.
Yeah, I think we could agree with the construct that, you know, mentioned it out.
yeah, because we changed the leadership trip to the Deck of Power trip in Boston, and it's airfare. We're just trying to book as soon as possible. So it's my understanding it was going to be approved, but I didn't see the paperwork either. I did call Mr. Vanek before I left tonight, and I just didn't hear back from him yet. So I'm sure I waited until too late in the day to contact him. So I will touch base with him tomorrow, and then let you know or let Brenda know if that indeed did get signed. We've never had it denied in the past, but it's a little bit different look this year. So for what that's worth.
Madam President, I'd like to move that we approve the concept of their travel as presented this evening, and to be followed up at the appropriate time with the detailed paperwork, leaving the superintendent able to approve it, the specifics.
Second. So we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Darling, seconded by Ms. Wells, to accept the travel request by NECA, basically a concept with further details to follow.
Yes.
Specific approval of
For each trip.
For the superintendent, specific approval, correct, without board action. That was the intent,
Yes.
without board
Yes.
action. Yes.
Without board action.
Because if it comes down without, you know, and we're not meeting for another 2 weeks, I don't want to screw them up just because we're not meeting.
Well, financially, it helps the district to get this tickets early. I mean, there's all-
Well, it helps them because it's money they raise, and that's a lot of hard work by some very enterprising young people.
All right. So a motion and a second are on the floor. All of those in favor? 7-0. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done.
And the best of luck. Work hard. Our next item is the consent agenda.
Madam President, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
So motion on the floor by Mr. Darling, with a second by Ms. Murphy to approve the consent agenda. All of those in favor? 7-0. So we'll move to item number 13, consideration of Eastern Bus Company contract. Dr. Hook?
So, when I met with Ms. Price and Mr. Powell to set the agenda, they asked, this was going to be a consent item, and they asked it be pulled to get some numbers to you as a board to help understand where we're at as far as ridership and lack of ridership. And I think one of Ms. Price's goals was, would busing help facilitate some of the congestion around some of our buildings. And so Ms. Beth has visited with Easton Bus, and as of about 4:30, she has updated numbers. So I think she's going to present some numbers to you as a board, and then her and I will answer any questions that you may have, be it regarding the contract or any of the numbers that she presents.
Bus riders that live 2.5 miles or farther away from the school is a total of 509 students. There are 43 bus riders from Woodland Village to Anthony. There are 17 from Shenandoah to Henry. The parent pay riders for students who live 2.4 miles or less are a total of 88. There are 36 that are waiting to see if there comes a spot available. And there are 126 requests for students that there's no bus route near or no bus stop near where they live. And it's under the 2.4 miles away from the school.
And on that one, just a clarity on that, because I had a question when Beth gave me that number. They are 2.5 miles of what, not living 2.5 miles away from, but they're also within blocks to where there wouldn't be a legitimate bus stop within blocks of the building. And so on that request, to our understanding, it wouldn't be feasible to run a bus 2 blocks to pick up kids or a kid. So unless the board would have a different direction on that, financially that might be a little difficult to sustain. And just as a note, as I shared with Ms. Price and Mr. Powell, you did have 2 buses assigned when we first opened Shenandoah. You're down to 17 riders. One of that, part of that was, at that time, there was no direct route for a kid to walk to school from the Shenandoah area. And at the time, we had 2 buses from Anthony lined up to go to the Woodland Village area, not specifically the Woodland Village, but that area. At the time, there was a lot of construction on Limit in that area, plus all of those students had to cross one of the busiest streets in all of Leavenworth. And so at that time, the board felt it was a safety issue to add those routes. Since, as you can tell by the numbers, we're down to 17 riders at Shenandoah, and we're down to, I think she said 43 at Woodland Village. Not sure why more parents or more students aren't riding those routes, because I think we have more than 17 kids attending Henry from the Shenandoah area. But that was what my understanding of Ms. Price and Mr. Powell's request last week is to give you, as a board, numbers, one, to discuss and to understand the ridership and where we stand as a district.
Mike, do we know how many kids are eligible from Woodland?
I don't have that. I talked with Beth on that as she's given the new numbers, and I'll let her answer, but my understanding of, at one point in time, we did that geotech tracking of, and we don't have the updated version of that yet done.
Well, can't we just go to the school roster and just look at addresses and figure it out?
Like a query, spreadsheet query, and just print out the addresses and students that live in that area.
Yeah, we could.
Their enrollment address and see who qualifies to ride buses where, just based on enrollment, not who's requesting it.
Right, and one of the things we could do is also, right now, all of our buildings are somewhat short-staffed, and our staff is running kind of ragged, but at some point in time, we should be able to catch up and hopefully have the opportunity where we can do some calls to those families that do qualify. Ms. Price had the idea of a survey and surveying some families, especially in those areas, and trying to get some data on why the ridership is lower than what's eligible. And so we still have a little bit of legwork to do. The information that they were talking about didn't affect the contract itself. It was more about giving background information to where our ridership was.
I'm still really concerned about the 126 students that are not making it to school. Well, I mean, not necessarily not making it to school, but having transportation difficulties. I mean, our absenteeism, I mean, statewide, we're having the chronic absenteeism, like Dr. Watson was saying, and that can be something, even though it's a couple blocks. I mean, we gotta get those kids to school safely.
One, you have the availability of buses. And two, you have the availability, you can buy the buses, but you can't find anybody to drive them currently. That's an issue. One solution would make it very difficult on a district to do it and trying to keep some type of structure, family structure, which is what this board has really stressed over the years, is that you can really alternate the times and you can provide as much transportation as you want, but you'll have buildings starting at all different times and ending at different times, which then makes it hard for the district to do any district level PE, which then that adds expense, because if you're not able to do it then, you have a lot of different, you have also time difference where high school kids and parents like to drop off and, you know, within those windows. So you would be looking at, you know, 45 minutes to an hour difference in time to start school. Then you would, if you would do that, you could cut down some of the costs of transportation. But in my opinion, you add more confusion to the day of the school, or to the confusion to timing of the days of school. But those are things as a board you can consider. But the 126 students, Ms. Wells, that she's talking about, our understanding they're within a few blocks of the building. We're not talking on that 1.5 to 2 mile outskirt of it. It's more where from a fluid transportation standpoint, it doesn't make sense. Now we can dig further into that, but that was the surface level kind of question answer that we received. Am I correct on that, Beck?
That's correct.
But can we take a look at maybe different, more innovative approaches in the school bus? I mean, we have vans, we have smaller vehicles. I'm not saying that it's feasible, but you know, there are schools that do shuttles within a certain area. We don't try to do it in a bus route, but they know that we have kids like this that are within a block, and they just shuttle them to the school, particularly in high traffic areas. Now, I know like Brewer and some of the others aren't really high traffic, but some of them might be, like Crossing Forth, like we talked about. Don't know whether it's a possibility, but I mean, why not explore, you know, those kind of things? Then we're not talking about extraordinary costs of the large vehicle and fuel and all the things that Easton would have to pursue.
You're like within any of it, your main cost is personnel. And so you would still have personnel, right? And possibly up to 2 based on the age of the student, and that for monitor, because you want your driver concentrating. So all of our buses have a driver and a monitor. We're adding cameras to all of those for safety of students and safety of the driver and the monitor. So there's a lot of transport, and I know you all know this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Transportation is not just a matter of having a vehicle; it's having everything that goes with that vehicle. And right now, from a school standpoint, nationwide, you go in any community and you'll see a bus out parked in the community saying we're hiring transportation drivers. And we found this out in our special education because we bought the van, and we're having a hard time keeping not only the driver, but then you have to have substitute drivers on that, because once you establish that route, it's an expectation that route runs. So you have a lot of things that go into it, as opposed to just saying, this is what we want to do. And if we were flush with staff right now, I would be a little more excited about trying to do some vans or some shuttles. But right now, it's extremely tough to look at expanding what we have currently based on where we're at publicly.
Back to the numbers, you said there were 509, was that the eligible population?
That's actual riders. You have just over 600 that are eligible riders that live 2.5.
Right.
Is that correct, Beth?
Yes, that's correct.
Can I ask a little clarification on this 126 that are just like a couple of blocks away from the school that don't have a feasible way to get on the bus? None of those are sped students. They're already all taken care of regardless if it's 2 feet from the school versus, okay.
If it's in their IEP for transportation, we provide it.
That's not a worry with this.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
But I think where the other board members' consideration was, one of the questions that we asked Dr. Wolf was, we've put the pre-K and K, almost all of them on the bus, just about.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you see the numbers of Lawson, they're not riding the bus. And so that's kind of where, that really began to fuel this conversation and concern. And not to cut back on buses, but to figure out how we can improve ridership.
Mm-hmm. I think possibly if you can query these other ones here, just to ask them why. What would it take you to be on the bus? What is it you need? Just besides, how far do you live, or do you live near this, or you in this neighborhood? I mean, just literally send out a query, what stops you from riding the bus for whatever reason, whether it's the less than the 2.5 and how much it costs, or is it more than 2.5? And see if we can't get some kind of consensus of where the imbalance may be.
Yes, I agree. And we can do that.
Thank you.
So, while we're talking about buses, and I think you might have told this to me before, but who's providing the masks? Is the Easton bus providing masks?
So we're asking the student, just like they would on the school, but Matt has provided each bus and Easton bus some surplus of masks for kids that wouldn't have one getting onto the bus.
Okay, well, I got a couple of really good friends that are bus drivers, and they indicated that the masks are all one size. We got some smaller kids that need smaller masks.
Well, we have some youth sizes, and then we have the adult sizes. And so, and then Ms. Murphy brought that up, the last time.
Mm-hmm.
And so your bus drivers evidently are going to you and not talking to Easton, who's not talking to us.
No, they're not, Mike. They talk to Easton. That's why they're talking to me. They're saying they're only getting large masks. So
I would have to check with Matt.
All right. I'm just saying, if you got a problem with getting it to them, or where, I don't know how it's all transpires, and you got
Matt looks like he's writing that down.
Yeah.
I'll follow up on it.
Okay.
I know we have ordered youth masks, and I'll follow up to make sure that we did receive those.
I mean, I don't think they're lying to me.
No, it's,
I just think there might be a breakdown in how.
There's a breakdown someplace.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions or comments on the numbers for the ridership?
We'll, once we get that information, we'll get it in FYI, and then I can also follow up with the next board meeting as well, so the public hears, anybody that would have interest in that.
Is there since we hire Easton to provide the service for us, we don't provide the service ourselves. If a family reaches out to Easton and they're like, I'm sorry, we can't provide you this service, is there any other recourse? Can they come to us and say, hey, they're not giving me services? Just so that we know.
The only way that Easton is turning them down, one is if it's in a proximity that isn't what they call feasible to pick up,
right,
would be is if there's not space on that bus that they would have to add another route. So on their original decision, the students that live the furthest away get priority. And then once we know all the 2.5 miles and further have had the opportunity to sign up, then it's on a first come, first served basis with that. Understanding that you may get approved here, then we have a family that moves in with 5 kids that are 2.5 miles away, then 5 kids get bumped off that route because the ones that live 2.5 miles away are protected by the law. If we provide transportation, anybody 2.5 miles away has the ability and able to be able to ride that route. So it goes from that down to a first come, first served basis. And even the ones that are on it, if a family moves in and there's not space, then the last students on are the first students off until the seats open up. And we talked to them about, and our goal is to give every student an opportunity to ride, and that we can. But the sustainability and the expense of that also plays into how much you expand. And so with ridership or eligibility around 600, roughly 600 kids, that's like a budgetary number that's figured in, and then anything beyond that, something else gives to open that up.
So again, to this law, the 2.5 mile law, again, should Kansas population want to try and get that started, they need to have a conversation with their elected reps that they would like this mileage level reduced, and then lobby those to get the state to do that, correct?
Right, and there's been some discussion in trying to get, they were really trying to get it incrementally lowered. So like to go to 2 miles for a period of time, and then 1.5 and down to 1. And I don't ever see it going, and discussion never led below 1. But that's how, like just a few years ago, they were talking about incrementally lowering that mileage limit to try to get it down to 1, but to be able, from a state standpoint, to be able to budget for those numbers to increase. So it was going to be over time, and it made sense, and they had the support from, all the administration that I ever spoke to. Our goal naturally is to provide as much transportation as we can, because one, it's the safest method for kids to get to and from school.
Right.
We understand that, and I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But yes, Ms. Murphy, you're right.
We need to light a fire.
It has to be driven from state legislation and state policy.
I just wanted the constituents to hear that, so that they can know that, we've discussed this more than a couple of times over the years that I've been here. But yeah, you want this changed, you want more help with busing, you've got to get a fire lit underneath your state reps and senators to get the action done on the state level to change the law.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Now, in actual function, it's actually working right now. If we have 600 students that are eligible, thereabout, do we hold those spaces against those routes for those bus volumes? In other words, if there's 40 that are eligible on a route, even if they don't ride, do we hold 40 spaces on a bus?
No, not totally no. And so each route is built on a system of flow, right? And so buses, one, they're analyzing costs on their end, which basically their cost comes over to us, right? And so they're designing those routes to be as efficient as possible. And so you may have a larger group of kids that are in, say, the north, or let's just use the southwest side of town. And you have a fewer number of kids in the northeast side of town. Well, they still have to run this route, and the only way to get it is to double up that route. So finish a route and then go right back out on a route, which then again, that's why I said earlier, one of the solutions is to change your times of buildings, and then they can run multiple routes with the personnel that they have. But that could mean a variety of things, that your high school's on one schedule, your intermediate and middle school's on a schedule, your elementary's on a schedule, and your early childhood's on a schedule. At that point in time, you can control a little bit of your cost, but what are you giving up to be able to do that is a real question. So to answer your question, there could be some buses that have seats, but from a feasibility standpoint and a timing standpoint, they can't get over to the area that has the kids, more kids that are waiting, because this route still is a guaranteed route that has to be ran.
We're not going to solve all this tonight, and solving it would require action at the state level. So with the understanding that we're going to revisit this in the future, I'd like to move the approval of the USD bus company contract for the 2021-2022 school year.
Second.
So I have a motion, Mr. Goodman. Thank you, Ms. Murphy. We have a motion on the floor, Mr. Brown, second by Mr. Goodman, to accept the 2021-2022 school year contract with Easton Bus Company. All those in favor? 7-0. Item 14, consideration of seed purchase.
Good evening. I'm in front of you tonight to ask for seed to go throughout the district, hit all of our yards again, hit all the construction sites. That's why I basically doubled the seed request from last year to this year. Last year for the yards it was 8 tons. This year it'll be 16 because of Pioneer Sports Complex, the IS, the front of the high school, and Lawson. And then the sports field mix, which is a 90-10 mix of fescue bluegrass, has gone up because of Pioneer Sports Complex.
So that's sod, right? So we're overseeing that with that mix?
Yes, we're going to oversee that with that mix because there have been some die out over the summer. And
what's going on the west side of that bank? That all weeds, looking like weeds.
West side of the bank. Yeah, most of all the bare ground out there right now is weeds. They've seeded it twice. Got a couple of really bad rains right after they seeded. And so nothing, and then we got real bad heat after that, so nothing's come up yet. I'm hoping that some of their seed still comes up, but I'm not counting on it. So we'll go out and reseed that entire complex.
You know, is this going to be recurring, or is this like you're cycling the overseed every couple of years, or based on need? What you've asked for this year?
Usually I'll come in with about 8 tons for the yards. That is recurring every year. We hit every stitch of ground that we have every year. This year it's just because of all the new construction that we're hitting it. Yes, it will be a recurring. Hopefully I can get, within 2 to 3 years, I can get back down to about 8 tons because we'll start establishing our own grass and everything. Right. And with the cultural practices, just keep it up.
We can kind of see this next year as well, and from that point, we're just
for the next 1 to 2 more years, yes.
Okay.
That's usually my run after big construction projects.
What's the total acres we got in the district? You got a number for that? I mean,
right now we're close to 200 acres.
200.
That we mow and maintain.
That we mow and maintain, yes.
Do you have additional costs for like fertilizer or any other?
That, yeah, usually I just get that out of my own budget.
Okay,
yep.
Thank you.
And yes, we do. We have the contract with the company to do all the front yards and everything real close to the buildings, but then me and my crew try to fertilize 2 to 3 times a year in the bigger areas.
Because I know we're getting close to that.
Yep.
Time of year again.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
I'd like to approve the seed purchase. It looks like there's 2 separate purchases for the fescue seed for $52,720 and the bluegrass mixture for $14,240.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor by Mrs. Wells and second by Mr. Darling to accept the low bids for the fescue seed and the fescue bluegrass mixture. All of those in favor? 7-0.
If you like numbers, Dave, that's 8,600,000 square feet.
Mr. Carney.
I've never heard that referred to that large an area in square feet.
That's awesome.
23,000.
Okay, our next items, consideration of the Symmetry Energy Settlement, Dr. Rowe.
So, as you know, this has been the ongoing, there was litigation. This would be the settlement that our partner KSB recommends to settle last February's spike in gas costs. And as we move forward with the agreement moving forward, Mr. Powell had a great question when we were visiting. Will there be language in there to prevent this from happening again? And in the new agreement, there is language to prevent this type of spike or charge to be charged back. And so it's Beth and I's recommendation to you as a board to accept the agreement or the settlement we pay, which is significantly less than what we were billed, and put this behind us.
And this is in addition to what we already had to pay to join.
That is correct. We paid, I think, it was like 14 or 19,000.
Yeah.
And this would be in addition to that, yes.
But then it magically goes away.
Yeah, but it's like, I think our total cost was 125,000. And so this was,
There's minimized.
This is slightly different, yeah.
yes.
Madam President, I move that the board approve the Symmetry Energy Settlement Agreement and the payment of $25,329.14.
Second.
And can I add just one more comment?
Yes.
I want you as a board and even the public to know that Beth and Matt, Matt in particular was in deep communication, and the decision was to keep gas going and pump into our buildings because we felt like the damage from frozen pipes and things like that would far exceed what you're approving tonight. So strategically, we didn't know how high it was going to be, but we did. Matt was on the phone with me multiple times a day through the weekends. You know, here's what I'm hearing, here's what I'm seeing, and we stayed the course of keeping our buildings, gas going to our buildings to prevent pipes from freezing and those types of things. So I do want you to know, as a board, your staff is always monitoring different things as they're happening. And again, I think we made the right decision as a district, and I think you're making the right decision as a board.
And I would just add one more thing too, and that is that I think it would be important for the board to know what we saved based upon taking that board action. You know, it was $14,000 or $15,000 to get this, close to $40,000, but we did not pay the full amount that we were originally charged. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I think that would be important for the public to know that based upon us taking those positions and fighting for corrective action that you guys had monitored and you approached us with, that something good came out of it.
Well, it wasn't our building or Matt's misuse of the gas that caused this issue. It was a company that chose to
right. But
take
the
advantage of the
media and
situation.
everything you knew, they were talking surcharges and spikes and things like that. We felt like in the end, the construction costs would far exceed and the damage would far exceed where we were headed. But my point of saying that, one, is to make sure that you as board members and our community knows you have great people monitoring and communicating and doing those types of things. And Beth and Matt were on top of it from the get-go.
Well, we've always done that. Is there anything else that we as a board, I noticed again one of the bullet points that says pool members agree to take no performative action or media outlet, press, NDA, any sort of guidance?
Basically, the way I understood that is once it's over, it's over. We don't revisit it. We don't discuss it. We move on, and all things remain the same.
Clean slate.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Powell, second by Ms. Murphy, to accept the payment and Synergy and Energy settlement agreement. All those in favor? 7-0. Item 16, continued membership in the Kansas Water Solutions Energy Management Program. Dr. Herb.
Yeah, this is just you as a board for the state conference. I think most of you have communicated with Ms. Shoemaker, and then I think you will want to approve a delegate to vote on behalf.
That's the next one.
Item 16, Dr. Herb, for the Kansas Water Solutions Energy Management.
Oh, excuse me. I've already put the vote down. Sorry.
Next one.
Basically, it's the agreement that we would enter back in with the company. There, as I said earlier, I apologize. I did say earlier that Mr. Powell had the question about making sure language is in there to cover that. That is in there to be with the cannot exceed cost, which we did not have in the previous one.
Madam President, I move that we approve of the Kansas Water Solutions Energy Management member participation and agency agreement as provided.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for approving the Kansas Water Solutions Energy Management member participation agency agreement by Mr. Powell, seconded by Mr. Goodman. All of those in favor?
Now it's 7-0.
7-0. Again, you're good. All right. So item 17, the Kansas Association of School Boards Annual Conference. So as a member of the Kansas Association of School Boards, we have to provide a delegate to vote at 2 delegate assemblies, one on November 6th and the second on December 16th. It is time I appoint Mr. Powell as our USD 453 delegate to vote in those 2 assemblies.
I'll second that.
Ms. Murray, that's all you need for this appointment. Thank you, Ms. Mills. Number 18, Kansas Association of School Boards Policies Update. This is our first read of all of those attached policies. Dr. Rose.
Right, and we, I know some of you have sent questions. We've tried to send back out to the board. We've tried to get some clarity based on those questions. If you have any further questions after you see the questions that were asked, please let us know, and we'll do our best to continually try to add clarity to those.
Anybody have any questions or comments? This is a first read. Okay, there are no questions or comments. We'll move on to number 19, facility.
1802.
Oh, I'm sorry. Shift over the page. So 1802. Is that right? Consideration of policy update on BCBI, public participation at board meetings. Discussion.
This is basically my suggestion to the last board meeting when we don't publish our agenda till Thursday, and our policy said 7 days in advance for a Monday meeting, which the 2 numbers don't add up. And my own feeling is that original policy dated back when we met on Wednesdays, and you could actually have 7 days. So my suggestion to the board as a first read is that we change that to Friday so it can Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It doesn't give the staff a whole lot of time to respond and research. I understand that. But I think it's important that those people who are paying enough attention to what this board or future boards are doing have a chance to respond if they wish to.
So with this saying, do we need to maybe set the agenda sooner so that they're not having to expect to gain that information through the weekend?
So the only downside to setting the agenda is easily, I mean, we can set an agenda, and then if we have to modify the agenda, we could do it before the board on the 9th. But a lot of the supporting documents cannot be done, like your check register and some of the financial is still working up all the way until Brenda hits submit at the end. So like your staffing reports, your financial reports, and those types of things are kind of time sensitive all the way up to having the board president, vice president set the agenda and move forward. So we could put an agenda out with topics much earlier, but as far as approval from board leadership, they won't have all the supporting documents to be able to do that.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the public participation policy at board meetings, where it went from 7 days to 3 days.
Well, I think this would be a first read.
First read and first read.
Motion next,
We'll leave it as a first read for now since it's with policy.
if that's acceptable to you.
Sure. And then if you have any questions or comments that you can make.
We're still gonna give them grace even though it's not been approved for a future board meeting.
Well, after next month, if the board would agree on their on the finalization after next month, it would be permanent then.
Right, but I'm just saying,
So like if some
between
would
this
come up
month
next.
and next, before the approval, are we gonna provide some grace?
Yeah,
Well,
I could visit with.
My opinion, Mrs. Price did a wonderful job of finessing the item by moving around unscheduled comments earlier in the agenda.
Absolutely.
Which was what needed to occur, and I do salute her for doing that.
Absolutely.
So as is right now, we'll use BCDI as a first read tonight. And we'll have it as part of the other policies being considered for the October board meeting. Okay, we'll move on to item 19, facility use policy. All of you should have a hard copy in front of you.
So, yes, as the board was aware, I believe we put it in an FYI that St. Mary's was requesting the use of our sports complex as theirs is under current construction. So Matt and his group, him and Dave, and I had conversations on kind of what the parameters were that we were looking for. One, with at that facility, with it being as new as it is, you're going to have lots of requests from everybody to use it, which we love people coming to our community and using facilities. One of the things, though, when we talked and had extensive conversations with the city on when we originally proposed the land proposal back and forth, what we were trying to do was for our district, not for everything to take away business and concessions and those types of things from sports field. And so what we tried to do is really hone in and tie into specifically USD's private school or a college on the original start of this, to get it going, to get it, one, established, because our grass fields aren't established at this time anyway. So after visiting with them and then visiting with Ms. Price and Mr. Powell, they asked to have some type of parameter to have the board look at prior to a discussion with whether or not to approve the use of St. Mary's to be able to use that field. So a couple points of emphasis that are important to us, and especially important to me. At this time, it does basically state unified school districts, private schools, and colleges. It also, one big thing that we're pretty particular about is the type of shoe that's allowed on the turf currently. And then also what's allowed in and out of concession stands, because we don't want things that are sold in the concession stand that end up taking the turf and compromising the structure, the cleanliness, and that of the turf. And so those are kind of the big things that we wanted in there. The other right now are just things that we've used at our other facilities already. As I shared with them, this is the start of an overarching big look at all of our facilities and updating those agreements, updating those costs, updating the parameters. But St. Mary's is on a time crunch, so this is why it's before you tonight to consider to whether or not you would want later in the board meeting to approve based on these parameters or changes to this. And I know it's a quick read, but it would be based on this for this fall, and then any tweaks that we would see from the use if it's approved, or if it's not approved and there's things that you want us to change, we would have, our goal was to have October, November, to bring it all to you with gyms and all of that. That's right before the rec league really starts hitting our gyms with basketball and those types of things. So there has been requests, I'm sure that you've already received some, of outside groups trying to position themselves for our turf fields. But when we did this agreement, it wasn't to take away anything that the city had going at Sportsfield.
How many games is St. Mary's anticipating in the fall league?
I believe 10 or less.
10? And they're gonna pay $500?
Well, that's when I put the fee on there. I put recommended based on that may be too high, that may be too low.
Well, you know what I'd like to see. I'd like to see us reduce the rate and the agreement that they can run for clinics for our kids. Because those fields, when I said this is for the future, we got to start thinking about what we're doing with the kids in the future. And a clinic from a college level coach I think would help the program quite a bit. And just reduce that cost with the agreement that they have to provide to the clinics at some point. For our kids and the future kids, the pioneers are playing the 1400 group all the way down.
Mike, I think the question, and this is just kind of a question to you. We were looking at preserving this incredible facility long-term, like you were saying. And that's why they recommended that we limit it to educational organizations, kind of like what you're saying. We're going to get basically professional coaches up to that level that we could then align the school and our programs with. Do you think that's appropriate? I guess that's my question. I mean, because we get all kinds of outside agencies want to come in and just wear and tear our great ball fields, but we wanted to focus on our kids.
Well, no, the problem in this community, and I've been involved with these programs for many, many years. And we're at a point now where the city doesn't provide, all they provide little leagues in the summertime, which are terrible. And the kids need to learn skills. And you get skills from clinics, not from going out and playing games twice a week somewhere. I'd just like to see you get the expertise to use with our kids, from low level down to the high school kids, and all be involved.
Well, they did have one summer clinic this year for the little kids.
St. Mary's didn't.
For softball.
St. Mary's did?
No, I'm just saying.
I'm talking about St. Mary's. Yeah, they have clinics. But I'm talking about upper level coaching. To me, would be a boon for our future program, because as we all know, it hasn't been too great in the past.
I think at a minimum, whatever fee we would charge needs to cover all of our staffing and maintenance for this. It needs to be able to sustain itself and not cost us money to let other entities, other public school, private school, whatever it might be, to use that it has to pay for itself.
The turf will get really expensive when we have sunflowers running around the middle of it.
However, policy KG already gives us the ability to adjust fees.
Right.
And this would just be rolled into KG policy. What I assume it is.
Well, that will be the overarching kind of, but what we're working on is like agreements for each of the different facilities as a whole.
So, to the board's action, because this is just for discussion, but really it needs to drive then the discussion we're going to have in a minute on item 21. Is it appropriate for a motion to accept this temporarily pending a development of a full sports program policy, which then would allow us to use this as at least an initial basis to didn't consider the item 21 for the University of St. Mary. Is that,
You can
really
set-
what we're after here?
Right.
You want to accept this as an interim policy as presented?
Right, and you can sunset it if you want.
Okay.
You can just include with all the other policy updates regarding the first read and suggest the, whatever we decide next time to do it with the,
Looks like
St. Mary,
Robert
we
has
can
something to say
make
about
a one-time exception, but just, if we assume the policy goes into policy KG, which already talks about use of school facilities by community groups. So,
This is specifying just academic education entities. Mr. Angiles?
So I love interrupting you guys in your discussion. And it's nothing about what you're talking about as far as board action. My only suggestion is that if you're going to accept this as interim right now, is that paragraph number 4 needs to be modified a little bit. Because as the way as it reads now, just looking at it, it says, it limits any damage really only to the artificial turf, not to the other facilities. So I just want to make sure that when we're actually writing that, as far as damage, that is covering everything in the facility, not just the artificial turf. So we could say, should any parts of the facility, including but not limited to the artificial turf, be damaged, so that therefore there's no one trying to sneakily wiggle out saying, well, I'm sorry that this fence was broken or whatever, but that's not as far as the damage.
Or somebody broke all the toilets in the bathroom.
Exactly. So just make sure that I don't want to limit, the way it's right now, I read it as a very limited construction.
So the entire facility?
Yeah, should be parts of the facility to include but not limited to the artificial turf will be damaged or viewed go normal way.
Correct. I think at least for the,
Any
terms,
change we
this
make
is only a
except
first, since this is only a first start, I think that'll at least cover that portion of it, and then if we need to get into more detail, I think we can go on to the future. I did want to raise that in before you voted on this.
Madam President, then I move that.
Can I do one more? I'm sorry. So I did notice at the Pioneer Stadium on Friday that there were many people in the crowd that were vaping. Do we need something in here? It says alcohol and tobacco, but like specifically vaping as well? Because they might not be vaping.
I would
tobacco
like
in
to
there.
have something more specific language wise about vaping.
So noted. In addition to consumption or sale of tobacco, alcohol, beverages, or, well,
Vaping.
restricted
You would use
substances
tobacco
such as
slash vaping products.
So, and I pointed this out earlier to you, but where it says no dogs allowed, it maybe should be changed to no pets allowed. So we don't run into any problems with service dogs or anything like that.
Or ferrets, or tigers.
Or peacocks.
Or peacocks.
Yeah, legally you can't,
You can't take out service dogs.
Right, no, that's what I'm saying. I don't want to run into any confusion where somebody sees no dogs and they're thinking we're saying we can't do that.
Because I know in Missouri, there's either dogs or ponies.
Well, yeah, so cannabis is a service animal, is a service animal, and basically it's opening as a public accommodation if somebody comes through. You can ask if the animal is a service animal, and if they say yes, that's about all you can do.
I was gonna say, that's what Missouri is too.
It's like, that's federal law.
And don't they usually still wear some kind of marching vest?
Yes, but
Usually.
that's not required.
It's not required.
Which is different than if we have an employee, because we can enter into the interactive process, but as a visitor, you can't require.
Right. Thank you.
So if we modify general conduct where it says no dogs allowed, it really should be no pets allowed.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I think you can say no animals allowed, parentheses, excluding service animals.
Good, okay.
At parentheses.
Okay.
Matt just verified on this, which doesn't change this specific one, but it would change the one coming up, which you're discussing kind of everything together, that they're requesting practice time as well.
So if I understand our conversation, discussion, there were two changes. One of them was property damage. That was the inclusion of the facility to include but not limited to. And the second one was then under general conduct, no animals allowed in pairings excluding service animals. That's,
And vaping.
yeah, where, I didn't find that word.
Item 6.
Alcohol, tobacco.
So, possession, consumption, or sale of alcohol, or tobacco, products.
So tobacco, vaping products, alcoholic beverages.
Since you're changing that, I would say restricted or illegal substances.
So, hang on a second. He brought up a pretty big point to me. They're saying they want to
Well,
practice.
we'll do that in 21.
Oh, 21?
Yeah.
This is policy.
So 6 should read.
I can't count
The possession, consumption, or sale of tobacco, vaping products, alcoholic beverages, or any restricted
Or illegal
or
substances.
illegal. So for the purpose of making a motion, I see four changes.
This would be a first read.
Yeah, okay, we're making a first read, okay. Well, the only problem with the first read is if we don't accept it as an interim policy, then we can't use it for St. Mary's, that's why I brought it up. Okay.
So that, to Doug's point for first read, because the timing, what I would suggest is it says sunset, which you guys are already talking about. It says sunset on this policy, to whatever you.
Pending full review and presentation of overarching policies, okay.
Which,
Yeah, I would suggest probably,
So pass
just
it.
in case you have more review or anything like that. Unless you want to next board meeting, you can set the next board meeting and then.
I think it's
put it
or
up.
that would be considered.
I was just curious what the next board meeting is going to say.
That's
So we're-
just be the next board.
That's what's on the scheduled meeting.
So, back to the purposes of discussion, see, number 4 was, should any parts of the facility to include but not limited to artificial turf field will be damaged or abused beyond normal repair such as to be paid for by the individual, etc.
I'm sorry, I just received this too. So, will be paid for by the individual, or just, I would love to add on there too, that, because there's nowhere here that says forfeiture.
Forfeiture of future ones.
Of the deposit, there's nothing in here that says forfeiture of deposit, so that needs to be added in there also. There's nothing in here, although I think it's general knowledge that with that deposit, something forfeited, but
So at the end, we should say, and subject to forfeiture of the deposit.
Excuse me real quick. Mr. Garland's kind of going to read his, I don't have a
Sorry.
hard copy of that. Oh, okay.
For some reason, I have 2.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we need to get a chance to get the full.
Well, I read Mr. Garland's real quick, I just want to put the little stars next to those other things, and I've already got the notes over here. But thank you very much for your patience.
So at the end of that, it say, shall be sufficient cause for cancellation or denial of all future use and subject to forfeiture of the deposit. Okay. So then number 6 would be possession, consumption, or sale of tobacco, vaping products, alcoholic beverages, or any restricted substance or illegal substance is strictly prohibited. And then the under 8, general conduct, the last line would be no animals in pairings, excluding service animals. And then this temporary facility rules and agreement will sunset pending presentation of a overarching facility policy, but no later than the November board meeting. Okay. So I move that the board accept the facility rules and use agreement as a temporary policy
With amendments.
With the stated amendments to sunset pending presentation and board approval of an overarching facility policy or no later than the November board meeting.
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor to accept the facility rules of use agreement as amended as an interim policy to be sunsetting in the November board meeting. Mr. Powell, second by Ms. Murphy. All those in favor? 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Powell. All right. So we're on item 20, the Henry Leavenworth Elementary traffic update. Trevor?
Yes, I'm gonna share Matt with you. Matt share some information, and then that would open up any discussion that the board may have. As we talked about previously, and the request from leadership amongst the board was to bring the update back to the board to look at how our bus lane's doing and to look at timing of cars actually stacking back up on Vilas. And so Matt has some information. Some of it, part of it is revisiting the original problem, looking at some timeline. I had him visit with some contractors to get some timing of what would be accomplished between now and first of the year. And so with that, I'll just turn it over to Matt. So.
Well, thank you. As Dr. Roth said, I'll just do a brief recap and then kind of a look at options that I believe you guys are looking forward to. So we'll start off with just a quick review of the problem. We had traffic stacked up on Vilas for several hours during dismissal, and cars were typically held on the street due to the bus needing to pull inside. That created a concern from about 1:30 to 3:30 during school days. The solution that we proposed and executed was putting a bus lane in the northeast part of the parking lot, and our goal was to eliminate the stacking and drop that down to 30 minutes or less. So I overlaid the image of the new bus lane that did get put in. If you remember, that was kind of a squeeze. We pushed fast, we got it done, and had it ready for the start of school. The cost was just over what we had agreed. We had an add-on piece for the city, and that was a $1,300 ad, so that took our total to $60,637. The building did a good job communicating with families, pushing out, and I'll show you their map here in just a second of expectations for pickup. And within that first week, I was out there every day during that week with their staff and watched them work through challenges, communicating with people that were picking up, grandparents for the first time, just really making sure everybody was focused to where they needed to go. And while I was there that first week, we were hitting just below 25 minutes of street time. And again, we talked about trying to hit it under 30 based off of what we were looking at, and we were automatically hitting below 30. So I think that was an overall improvement for the students and for the community in that area. This was the map that was shared out, so it detailed all the pickup zones so families could know where to pull in and how to direct their flow of traffic. This is something I showed last year before the project with the bus lane, and that just approximated the stacking sizes, about 45 cars and 1,000 linear feet. The blue line shows about where we're stacking. We're stacking a little bit into the bus lane. And so we're getting between 30 and 40 cars in the parking lot, which by about 3:10, you start to see cars sitting on the street, and then until about 3:25, 3:30, we see those cars come into the parking lot and no longer on the street. Out of the several options that we talked about, we're going to focus on option B, just simply for the fact that if we're looking at pulling all the vehicles we can into our property, this is the longest route that's really feasible. We talked about coming off of both sides of the streets. There is a very large embankment there that's probably 9 to 12 feet that would have to be overcome with grading. A single lane is what was initially presented, and that is primarily due to the structure around the retention pond. If we went to a double lane, kind of talk through that. If we went to a double lane, we would look at increasing the cost there. Some of the considerations are that all the schools really have this a little bit of congestion at dismissal. If you go by any of the schools, you'll see it backed up for a block or two around the building. But I think overall, most of the school buildings do a fair job getting their kids dismissed within a 15 to 25 minute time frame. The other considerations moving forward, there would be no cost share with the city as we had with the bus lane. And as we discussed previously, these options would be in the range of $200,000 to $250,000, and that's strictly a high-level budgetary number. It could come in high-low, depending on material costs and labor costs. And the timing of the project is a big consideration. If we're wanting to try and get this done before winter, we have several things to consider. So if I continue here. If, for instance, you gave notice to proceed to take this out and put bid documents together on option B, my current engineer that's working with me could not meet a deadline. His documentation would not be ready till October 8th because he has other projects ahead of us. That means I would not have that bid back to you for the October 11th board meeting. So you would have an option for a special meeting. You would be able to wait till the November meeting, or we could select another engineering firm, which our local engineer had said he would be willing to do that if that benefited the school district, and turn that work over. Options for the double lane would increase the estimate, not necessarily double, but it could increase it considerably, especially if we start talking about re-engineering the retention pond and doing the engineer work that would be required for that. And then the construction, as we move into the chillier months, we have to keep in mind that asphalt plants tend to shut down somewhere around Thanksgiving time frame. And if we had any wet weather in between now and then, that could push that whole project off. So you would have an option of up costing the project to do concrete, and that would extend your build time probably into about February. All this would take place during school time, and we would have contractors working in the green space out and around those areas. This would all still be subject to city approval and those discussions. Contractors that I talked to, even outside engineering firms, said it would be a tight squeeze to try and get documents together and have this completed before a winter time frame. So we just put those together for you to kind of have some ideas of what could be expected from contractors.
Matt, are you thinking curb if it's asphalt?
Yes, if it was asphalt, absolutely curb. Curb would probably be recommended just for runoff control to direct it to that.
Apart too.
Yes, you have a lot of movement without curbing. With curbs, we could also direct the water runoff from that long strip into our retention pond a little bit easier. Final options to consider would be additional review with an architectural firm, providing a second opinion on everything that we've discussed. Parking lot layout to the flow of traffic. Continue working as we are to communicate with our families. And again, Ms. Clampett, Ms. Smalls has done a great job with their staff to manage the vehicles that come into the property and share out information with the families. And then just a consideration, this property is pushing 11 years old. So that asphalt parking lot that's there is going to be on my list very shortly for renovation as well. So any work that we do, that would be something else to consider rolling into this project if we were to move forward. So hopefully I painted a decent picture of where we were and where you could possibly go. And I sit here ready to answer any questions.
Okay, I got one. I don't want to see us rush into this, especially during the school year. I mean, if it's a project going to be done over the summertime, I mean, what's one more year going to matter, really? I mean, how long has that school been there? I forgot. 11 years. And if this is something viable for the group down there in the housing area is ultra concerned about, and I understand the concern. I'm one of the grandpas out there every day, so I know what's going on, but I just don't want to see us doing that during this. To me, it's not a good idea to me to do it during the school year. Wait till summertime. That way you got more time to get all your facts and figures together, and if we have to have a design project or something, you know what's going to happen, especially if we're dealing with asphalt.
And the resurfacing would be able to wait until the summer, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
it's not
that's not an
just
immediate
repair.
need. It's just, I'm just putting that out there for you to
Right,
consider
right.
if we move
And
forward with
if there is something, it's something you can still pack quickly or
absolutely,
something like
yeah.
that. Okay.
That's completely separate. I just threw it in there to,
Right, I
to
just
let you know that there is
find
more
out
work out there.
That all of a sudden somebody lost a Volkswagen after the first
No, it's not that.
storm.
We won't let it get that bad, no.
I do like how the Henry Leavenworth has a bus lane monitor to keep parents from making that left turn into their bus lane, trying to cut through cut the line, as it were.
Yeah, you
I
definitely.
love watching that take place.
And I know I purposely dodged first day of school, because first day of school is crazy. At any school, I
It
don't
was-
care where
it
you
was crazy.
go, it's utter chaos on the
Yeah,
first day.
Mike and I were out there on the first
Dropping
day.
and picking up, but I can say all the mornings that I drive my granddaughter to school there, it's been a breeze. To me, it's just a quick, easy, bam, they're waiting for her at the door. So I haven't come across any problems yet.
Good.
So how, on the graphic, are they stacking all the way back around the corner?
So one of the days that I was there monitoring, they did make it back around the corner. I think it's 22nd. So yeah, it did reach it, but it was for a short amount of time.
And have we looked at just adding another row of parking in that parking?
That was an option we looked at. I didn't show that because it didn't offer as much off-street parking if that was the direction you were going. But that is an option that's still out there that would be beneficial for Grandparents' Day and those type of events. Like I said, there's a lot of options out there. I'm just trying to set that timeline for expectations. And if we decide that, or if you decide that that is something you want to take a little more time to consider, those things could all be reviewed again.
Just a couple things. I've been out there every week since we started at different times, because I don't think I would take just a snapshot of it. Like Matt pointed out, that doesn't tell you anything. I want to point out that this school positioning within the community is different than the others. Even though there might be stacking, there might be cars, in different parts of the community waiting to go pick up their children and drop them off. If something happens in that line, that entire community is cut off from emergency services. That, to me, is a pretty significant consideration for this board. Did we create a problem? No, but we have part of that problem to solve. Numbers matter, because it's not really how long we're stacking. If we have 25 minutes and there's 45 cars stacked, and that's pretty common, we're at risk in that 25 minutes of cutting off that community in a critical time. There might be a fire, there might be, what the circumstance might be. So, and I'm just giving this perspective for each of you to consider, because the board's got to decide. But I counted cars, and actually they were averaging, because I first of all want to say that school building and the leadership there has done some incredible things to get that flow down timeline-wise, what they've done. And I can kudos to every one of them. I mean, they're out there, all hands on deck, every day, taking care of it. But we haven't had a really bad weather day. We haven't had ice. We haven't had a number of circumstances that no matter how well you manage it, you're not going to solve the problem, because we've given them a problem they can't solve. So you can get about 45 cars, believe it or not, packed in that little area, waiting to pick up their kids. So we figure, I counted on 4 separate days, and we average about 140 cars. It just boggles my mind. We've got 1 car for every 2 students coming in there every day. But about 140 cars flow through there. So we start out with 45 cars that are stacked in the parking lot. That still leaves 95 cars. And you just saw, on the average, we're stacking 45 cars, which means about another 45 cars are planning their entry to pick up their child at whatever in a way that it flows. But there's about 140 cars flows through there. So that's what we need to be aware of. And anything goes wrong, those 140 cars are now sitting 40 in the parking lot, and then everybody else is somewhere in the queue. So, and when's that going to happen? Bad weather, etc. So I've got a real concern on us solving this one. We can deal with the other schools as we have problems, but this one really creates a safety issue for the community.
But other schools have got the same problem. You've got David Rural back onto, okay, the name of the street, Seneca, because it'll last, it's 2 blocks long plus. Lawson stacks up.
No, I don't
Anthony
disagree.
stacks up in the Thornton.
I don't disagree, but I haven't gone to those though. This is the only one that I know of. That you really, truly have an accident on that corner, and all of those houses are now isolated from emergency services. I don't think any of the other schools stack that way. They might, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my concern for this one. But those are the numbers. After observing it about every week since we started school, and as a board, it's the kind of thing we have to consider.
And we could also work on the state to get them to lower the mileage rate, to get more kids on buses would help alleviate some of that problem. So talk to your legislature.
I would like to make sure that the extra lane of parking on the west side of Henry be kept in your portfolio of things to be looking at, because I think that is something that's will be of use in the future, whichever way we go.
So back to Mr. Darling's point and Mr. Powell's point, timing-wise, is this something that you want to pursue between now and the first of the year? And Mr. Carney's point as well, before the first of the year, is this something that you want an overall package of, I mean, we have still to work with DLR. Matt's actually had conversations with Amber, just kind of waiting to put them in on the project as well based on timing. And so we have, as we talked about the ROTC facility, this could be as large of a project as you want, from parking lots and turning lanes, and you can dump a lot of resources in pretty easily.
I'm almost of a mind that an all of the above approach may be needed. It'd be good for us to have the parking lot areas because of the family nights, because people are parking in other people's neighborhoods and their driveways and stuff like that. And we can have the dog leg that comes out where they stack inside there instead of stacking out on wireless.
But I think as far as construction time period, it needs to be, next summer or dirty dirt.
I don't think we need to put any undue hurry on this, get it done right the first time.
And we need to have it inside of Matt's entire 5-year, because, we can spend that capital outlay fund several times. And we really need to control our appetite on which projects we do. And I'll be honest, I would love to support Top's drill floor, because I shudder every time one of those rifles hits that wooden floor.
Yeah.
And
I like that idea too, but this has been a problem for 11 years and it's been constantly complained about.
Personal opinion of mine is that the city that let that development go in without fixing the street leading to it is a problem, and that's happening over off of the east side of 20th Street, where that new subdivision is going in, although that subdivision is not in the Leavenworth School District. But from 20th Street to the subdivision is a very nice road, but following that road up to Warren, it goes back to a cow path.
Right.
So, that
I don't disagree with you.
We continue to do this to ourselves as a city.
Right.
And that throws it onto the city, in my opinion. City needs to get its planning and zoning fixed.
I would love for the city to come in and fix it, but there's stuff that we can do as a school board to fix this as well.
But we have lots of things, just like the city has lots of things.
Right.
And we've got to have, see what is out there and what our total thing is, because we're going to spend $500,000 to $600,000 just on roads every year. Correct, Matt?
would like to.
Yes. Because if we start having buildings leak, then we have potential problems with mold and things like that, which are not good for, breathing things. So.
Now, I mean, this will be a solution that'll be fixed forever, assuming we do it. Huh?
Till the next resurface.
Till the next resurface. It's still gonna cost us money resurfacing it every
11 years.
15 years? What's the?
10 to 15, it depends.
10 to 15, probably stretch that to 15.
No, you don't
Depending
want to
on,
stretch any
well, so,
highways.
but we still need to fix this problem.
I don't think the asphalt jobs we've done in the city are guaranteed for 10 or 15 years from my driving on every day. But that'd be nice to say that.
So I guess that's where we are as a board, bring us more options and look into parking expansion and a dog leg, and let's see what that looks like.
So
yes.
go ahead and engage in with.
So not a rush to failure, get a phased plan to improve the multi-lanes, the parking lot, whatever the options are out there that you need to consider. But not a rush, so we're looking maybe next
Right.
construction.
We can buy that 5 acre down at the other end and just see if the city lets us put a rock on it for parking or stacking, whatever we want to call it.
All our options, yeah, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Put that steel runway planking down, see if that works.
No, there's discussion. These are guys are more detail. All right, so moving on to item 21, University of St. Mary request to use the baseball softball complex.
My first impression was it was for games. Matt and Dave just said it was for practice as well. So you would be looking at a time frame between now and probably mid-October. So if the board would grant that, I would, my suggestion or my recommendation to the board would be like a flat fee, X amount of dollars, and if it would, our cost, to Ms. Wells' point, would exceed that, then we would be able to charge them back for any fee that wasn't covered in that flat fee.
Quick question, are we gonna charge them something different for practicing versus when they're actually having games out
Well, if
there?
we do it like a flat fee, they would have it from the time frame between now and
Okay.
the end
An
of their fall
all-encompassing
season.
fee to take care of that section.
And it's just for the fall,
Just for this
it's just for
season.
the fall season.
They're hoping to have their fields done by mid to late November.
Okay, all right.
So this is a one-time deal?
Yeah, because they're putting in turf.
Because I want to see Pioneer people on there more than St. Mary people.
Right, and this isn't gonna interfere with anything we're doing.
We currently have.
Softball and baseball are spring sports.
All the Mammoth was out there doing commercials.
So, Beth can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say we started maybe $3,500 between now and then, and leave some wiggle room to recoup any charges that were unforeseen.
So Dave or Matt, now are they gonna clean all this up? Are we gonna be responsible for cleaning behind their games, or I didn't catch that?
We have a person that's assigned out there, Robert, who's like mowing. He'll be there during the facility, like when they're there, he'll be there. When they adjusted his schedule to fit the use of that field, so he would open and close the field, and then he would make sure the trash bins and those types of things. If it's excessive, that would be a charge back. That to me would be up and above.
Is it worthwhile making it a cost plus contract with the plus being $10? That way, whatever it costs us, we make $10 on the deal, but we don't try to screw over people. And then I like Mike's idea, hey, can you guys put on a clinic?
I do like that.
And that's something that we could definitely visit with Mr. Miller about.
Did you say you anticipated 10 games during this time frame?
Usually that's what fall, they usually do a 20 game set, and usually they split that, so I'm basing that on just past experience.
So how many practices then would it be? Would it be every day, like 5 days a week between
Most
now
likely it
and
would be.
Okay.
At
But
least 5 days a
they're
week.
gonna practice on the dirt field versus the turf.
Our dirt field,
Or
our regular fields aren't ready to open up yet. We still have some overseeding to do. Dave has some fill-in, just how things have settled and that kind of thing.
Okay.
And it's just for baseball.
Just for baseball, okay. Thank you.
So they won't be taking infield on the softball field or anything like that? Okay.
I move we let University of St. Mary use our ball field for the fall sports program. Yeah, the cost plus basis.
Second.
The ball field.
Ball field, yes.
So we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Brown and seconded by Ms. Murphy to accept University of St. Mary's request to use the baseball fields. All those in favor? 7. Right, yours.
I have a presentation. If I could have Mr. Darling join me at the middle here on that side of the table, and I'll be on this side of the table so we're socially distanced. But one of the things from like a leadership standpoint, from my leadership standpoint and the cabinet and the team and the administrative team, Brenda and everybody in this office, we've dealt with some unprecedented times over the last 2 years, and they've been and were some of the most difficult times for us all, not only as a community but as a nation. And we do things differently for each board president that passes the gavel. So did a little, I'm going to take it out just for you, Mr. Garland, because I think it's important to see and share. So on the gavel, it says board president July 2019 to 2021. But there's a quote on the plaque that I think Mr. Darling, you represented extremely well. And it says Leavenworth USD 453 presented to Douglas A. Darling. Leadership is not a position or title, it is action and example. And I thought that you, during your time of presidency, probably all board presidents across the nation, was probably some of the most difficult times to serve. And I truly believe you led by example. And I just wanted to give you a big appreciation.
I'm gonna have to rearrange my I Love Me a Whole Lot wall. But it'll probably go next to my Gladius Iberius that they gave me when I retired from the civil service.
Doug, thank you.
Roman short sword, for those that didn't understand that.
Construction update. We are ran into another delay since I spoke with Ms. Price and Mr. Powell. Our updated projection of delivery of flooring is the end of September, first part of October, and furniture is following suit with that. So our original, we thought the flooring and everything was going to be delivered in this week, or as late as next week. It's actually the week after, to the first part of November or October, and Navholz and their crew are ready to come in and get it as soon as they could get the material. Same with our furniture. So our elementary schools will be finished hopefully by the end of the first quarter now. That would give Matt's crew time to get some polish and stuff on the floors to protect them as they come in. And so I believe people are the teachers and principals are pretty excited about the facility getting ready to get in there and use them, but we have to have the flooring and the furniture to be able to get that done.
You're speaking of the new collaboration spaces at the.
Yes, the collaboration spaces at each of our elementaries. All the other construction up to date is complete. We are still working on some punch list items, but for the most part, construction in the bond is actually wrapped up, for the exception of our 3 elementary collaboration spaces within those. Yes, Ms. Wells. Thank you. Just want to mention this, that your principals are either present or they're watching board meetings, they follow board minutes, and they're very in tune to what you as a board and the direction that you give during each board meeting. And so as things are happening at the board meeting, they're formulating plans to get things implemented within their buildings. And so, you know, as you set things and you set parameters, they're implementing them in the next day of school in some cases. And so as things are decided or discussed, that's carried over into the classrooms. And so that's important to know, because I think some of them take some heat, and rightfully or unjustly is how it, but they do an outstanding job. And as I said to Mr. Darling, these are some unprecedented times. There's a lot of individuals that you know, are putting forth effort that they've never done before. And it's needed because we're trying to educate kids to the best of our abilities. Teachers are doing things today, time-wise, that they've never been called upon to do before. We have teachers that aren't doing or aren't getting plan times because they're covered. As we talked about in the transportation discussion, it's not because we're not trying to find people to fill those, but we also need quality people to fill those. Substitutes, aides, business or office staff personnel, all of those things. We have teachers, we have other individuals, principals, district office staff going out, helping, doing those types of things because that's the right thing to do. So I asked the board and I asked the community, and I wrote an article for the paper. There's grace. There's going to be times where we disagree on different things, and we as a board with the superintendent, you've done that, and I thank you for that, right? Because you as a board made a good decision against my recommendation. I own that, and I have no problem with that. Would I make the same recommendation again at the time? Probably. Will the board make the same decision? Yes. And it worked out. That's what this is all about. And the key to be able to have those discussions, and Nick probably summed that board meeting up better than anything. All the meetings that he filmed, that was probably one of the best board meetings he ever attended. There was tension, but there was discussion. But the appreciation needs to go back to the buildings. It needs to go back to our staff, our teachers, our paras, our cooks, our custodians, and our principals, because they're leading those buildings. And so I wanted to take the time during my minute today to really emphasize, not only to you as a board, but to our community as a greater whole, they've got outstanding people in their buildings. Give them some grace, but more importantly, give them some appreciation, because appreciation to a teacher, a reflection back of a student, or a principal, a high five in the building, those types of things, money can't buy. And they go a long way. But anger, frustration, and disagreement really puts a lot more pressure to creating success in every classroom every day. I thank you for listening. That's all I have.
I've got a question if I could. Last, we set the goal of situational masking, and where I'm at when I go to the schools in David Brewer helping out that teacher, I see it being done on a fairly decent level. I've got other people telling me that the only time their kid gets a mask break is when they eat lunch. Can you give us kind of a feedback on that?
Right, and so that, one of the things that, and Mr. Goodman and I had this conversation, 2 weeks ago, I think it was, on the same thing. And so one of it is based on spacing and the ability to space out. One of it is to make sure that the teachers themselves are comfortable within their environment to be able to do that. That's what the situational piece to that was. Then it would be up to the greater group in that area to be able to decide and when to do that. Now, elementary, they probably are getting a lot more mask breaks than the middle school, high school. Middle school, high school, depending on their class size and where they're at in the building, could determine that. I don't have, I sent out a letter to the staff, which I shared with the board, making sure they're encouraging them to use the situational masking in safe areas that they can get it done in. And so, to my knowledge, it's being done. It's one of those things, is it too much? Is it not enough? Is always going to be in the eye of the judgment of the beholder of when it's happening. You know, our pre-K K Center is probably the one building we're having the most difficulty keeping masks and the social distance and that. And I think the numbers within that building have kind of shown that. But our other buildings, and visiting with principals and communication from HR and just what we've been receiving, I can't tell you that it's a problem because we haven't had a lot of issue with it up to this point. But as I told Mr. Goodman, it's a lot easier to start a little stricter in this area in this time, as we've seen, because we went away from masks last March or May, and then in August, you know, there's a lot of things that's happened. So if teachers are a little more strict now, it's easier to let the reins go a little bit as our numbers in our community and our percentages show, as opposed to being a little less restrictive, and then those numbers climb, and then we're being more restrictive. It brings more attention to that. So to give you exact numbers, Mr. Darling, I don't have, but to as far as complaints getting to me, or I haven't had a lot, no.
So from my foxhole, after we had that discussion, I work with a lot of the youth kids in our church, and I get a lot of their feedback, and a lot of them are in the high school, as are my kids. So they have indicated that things have gotten slightly better. They appreciate the opening up of the gymnasium area. Basically, more space to spread out. They'd really love to get back to those collaborative spaces. I know we're having issues with staffing, but anything we can do to let them spread out more. Because stacking them next to each other, eating at a lunch table with no masks on, kind of the opposite of what we want. We want them to spread out and have that distance while still being able to socialize and eat their lunch together and stuff. So, but all the youth that I've talked to said it's getting a little bit better. It's not nearly as bad as it was right at the beginning of school. So that's just from my heart.
I'm hoping that the administrators are encouraging the teachers that feel comfortable to go use non-traditional spaces like under a tree out in that Matt and Dave keep mowed so nicely.
Yep, I would support any teacher that would do that.
Well, I think it goes back also, we've got some really great collaborative spaces. Some of them are, ones aren't finished, but we have others, and I would hope that teachers would exercise that option in those collaborative spaces, because that's what it's about, collaborating. Mask just gets in the way of that entire process. I just, I thank teachers for what they're doing. I just hope that they are intentionally following the spirit of the policy. Because that's what we wanted to give them the authority to do that, so you can either use it or use it. So I trust our teachers, so I'm saying they're using it.
So we'll move on to item number 23, executive session for matters relating to students. Please add a 5-minute
Probably 5 minutes for this.
Say again?
5 minutes for this, so we said 8:20, would that be all right?
So that's round number?
You got a
Okay.
break?
That was
Yes.
break in there.
That's what I said,
great.
up front.
Madam President, I move that we go into executive session to discuss matters affecting a student pursuant to the exception relating to actions adversely or favorably affecting a student under the Kansas Open Meeting Act, and that we return to open session in this room at 08:20. 2020. Oh, we're doing, okay.
8:20 is fine.
8:20,
Second.
how's that?
Yes, we have a motion, Mr. Powell, second by Mr.
You're
Leary.
inviting Dr. Roth, Amy Sloan, and Robert Hinkle.
Okay.
Amended second.
Amended second, amended motion.
Dr. Roberger, too.
Amended second.
Okay, so we'll be inviting
Anybody
Dr.
else?
Rose, Dr. Redelberger, Amy Sloan, and Robert Hengela into the meeting. Okay. All those in favor?
No.
7?
Yep.
No. All right.
Okay.
So item number 24, executive session for non-elected personnel.
Madam President, I move to go into executive session to discuss non-elected personnel pursuant to the exception under the Kansas Open Meeting Act, in order to protect the privacy interest of the individuals to be discussed, and that we return to open session in this room at 08:31.
No.
At 20.
I'm not staying here that long.
All right.
The board will invite Dr. Roth, Amy Sloan, and board attorney Robert Hengela into the meeting.
Second.
Motion on the floor for Mr. Powell, second by Mr. Darling, for us to go into executive session. All those in favor? 7-0. We'll be back at 8:31. All right, so finally moving up the evening, we're going to close the meeting to item 27, so upcoming meeting dates. Ones that are important for board members for the next 2 weeks is the September 27th work session, October 8th is homecoming, and October 11th is our next board meeting. And item 2702, unscheduled patron input. I have Mr. McAllen. Just to review the bidding, sir, you've got 3 minutes.
And I just rehearsed it in the parking lot at 2:45, so I think I can do it.
All right.
My name is Mac McCowan, and my child attends Warren Middle School. I live at 1901 Woodridge Drive. This entire pandemic would not be possible without the WHO changing the definition of a pandemic, the CDC changing death reporting requirements in the spring of last year, our hospitals being monetarily incentivized to treat COVID patients, our government endorsing a faulty diagnostic tool, the PCR test using inflated cycle thresholds to increase false positives, and as some call it, cases. The media embarking on an incessant fear campaign, and an elected body such as this being complicit with your votes. It is also funny that my mask only works if you wear one and my vaccine only works if you're vaccinated too. Are any of you starting to think you've been bamboozled? If you believe our county health department stats, 66 residents have perished since 1 January of 2020. We have 81,752 residents. 99.92 of us are still alive after 20 months. As you willingly continue to deprive students and parents of their liberty at 99.92% and likely higher, at what percentage are we authorized to get that back from you? Government and government bodies are not elected to take our liberty and our freedom. You're elected to preserve it. There is no law requiring masks, yet you defer to the health department, the KDHE, and the CDC, who has been nothing short of disingenuous on COVID death and reporting. You have essentially become part of the medical administrative state. The last 40 plus years, randomized controlled trials done on masks showed they were ineffective at controlling the spread of influenza type virus. All that went out the window with COVID. Approximately 78% of all hospitalizations and deaths are of the overweight and obese. I don't see you regulating what obese kids can eat at lunch or your faculty. Would that not prevent more future death than your current policy? We have kids with natural immunity walking your halls, but your policy forces them to wear a mask. This appears to be more about compliance and making people feel safe than it is about the individual students. You do not work for the medical administrative state. You work for taxpayers, voters, and the parents of this district. Next month, I would like you to present to our community all the randomized controlled trials that you are using to justify the forced masking of our children. Not just that you like KU or you trust KU Med Center. This data should be able to stand up in a court of law. Please include what evidence you have that there are no long-term side effects to masking our children. For future pandemics, what is your benchmark? At 99.96, can parents make medical decisions on masking for their children? Please reevaluate your policy and make mask optional. Thank you. I'll take questions if anybody wants to throw them my way.
No, but thank you, Mr. McCown. Next item is our board member comments, and I'll start with you, Mr. Garland.
I'm flabbergasted by what I was given by the staff and you all, so thank you.
You did good. I'm sure everyone.
Ms. Murphy?
I want to start because one of the first things I look at the agenda, because no, I don't always look at item 1. I go straight to the donations. And just between August 13th and September 1st, we had $4,483 worth of goods or cash donated from various entities, to include 250 backpacks filled with school supplies for our students. So, you know, and masks. Several different times masks were donated as well. So to all of you that have donated, I don't know if you want me calling your names out or not, they are on the agenda, but thank you so much for supporting our schools and our students. And then I wanted to say that I did appreciate the board and of course Mr. Darling's suggestion last month to change the policy so that we can vote on this on next meeting, that it's a 3-day period to have scheduled patron input to the 7th. Because I do know how important it is to the community, especially since everything seems to be so fluid and everything, that they have feel that they have a voice. So I think that really helps soothe some of the savage beasts, knowing that, you know, they have time now, that it's not past the time when they get it. Then the next thing I would like to say, we had an amazing football game. No, we didn't win. But we had an amazing football game. We had our amazing JROTC program out there. There was a huge flag display, garrison flag display, because it was honoring our military members within the community. So it was quite extraordinary, but I want to say on top of that, I got to see the new band uniforms, and they just look so snazzy and sharp, and I really appreciated getting to see that as well. And that is all. Thank you.
If you want to talk about football, you need to move 500 miles south.
Mrs. Wills?
So as part of being a board member, I serve on the Leavenworth County Child Abuse Prevention Council. We've got a couple of events that pertain to our kids that are open for the public here soon. So the first one is September 26th, Karma at 223 South 5th Street. She's at 5th Street in Cherokee, is hosting a free community breakfast. I say free because she's asking for donations, and those donations are, it could be monetary, of course, but also new coats, socks, underwear, clothing items for school-age children to be donated, and she's going to be serving lots of delicious, yummy breakfast foods from 8 to 11. So if you can do that, it's a Sunday. They're not normally open at that time. She just asks that you come out and donate, and all of those clothing items are going to be donated to us, the USD 453, to go to our various closets at the schools. And then the other thing, October 22nd, the Child Abuse Prevention Council is hosting a free training that will be held at the Riverfront Community Center. Check-in begins at 8:30 and it will end by around noon. And it's going to be giving information about social media safety things, a parent and adult guide to keeping our kids safe, giving us some tools that the kids already know about that we might not know about. And one of our KSDE representatives is going to be there providing as the keynote speaker, and I apologize, I did not write down his name. And I don't have the flyer with me tonight, but it is free. If you are available, please come. And that date again is October 22nd. It's a Friday. And that's it.
Okay. Mr. Goodman?
I can reiterate what Dr. Rowe had said earlier about the staffing, and every chance I get, I try and when I see staff members, thank them for what they do, and try to make a more concerted effort to get to the buildings and do that more often. But when I do go to the football games, and I'll talk with the staff every once in a while, and that'll be the last thing I say is there anything I can do for you? And I really appreciate what you guys do for my kids. And I was at the game and saw the ROTC program, and actually my daughter was one of the flag carriers, and I had my father was there, and he's a West Point graduate, and there used to be a discussion that we need to have with the ROTC staff, because I had to break the bad news to my father that my daughter would be carrying the Navy flag.
Go Navy.
Let's not go there.
Ever talk to the command sergeant major?
So, me and the command sergeant major are going to have a discussion. But, again, really appreciate, when I saw the game, what I saw was lots of our staff members running this way and that way, and organizing stuff and putting stuff together. And they had their student volunteers with them and directing them where to go. And that's one of those things that makes the game run that most people don't pay attention to. And I never did before, but now I do. And so again, extend thanks to all our staff for doing what they do at all of these events, big and small. That's all I have.
Mr. Carney?
A few weeks ago, I approached Dr. Rose and I surfaced a little issue about the fact that it didn't look like the community was going to have any public forum for the upcoming elections. And Dr. Watson kind of reinforced my idea because he talked a lot about civic engagement, like kids in high school. But right before I came here tonight, I got an email. And somebody twisted Mr. Johannes' arm, I guess, to have a forum. And about the same time, I got an email, we all got the email from Mrs. Keith, from Miss Keith, she was missing. And so I still think they should be involved. And I talked to the secretary down at the chamber office to say, let's get the kids involved, and it's important. And so hopefully, we'll reach out to somebody to get the kids down there. I think it'd be good to have the journalism class report on what happened that night. I think it'd be good to have the people ask some questions, take questions from everybody. So I'm glad that the chamber, because I was getting the impression, I think a lot of people around town get the impression that they didn't have an interest in what's going on. But for whatever reason, there's going to be something going on. Nice to see everybody in the forum.
Mr. Pearl?
First of all, question to Dr. Rowe. How are we doing on volunteers? The whole COVID thing just kind of kiboshed anybody coming into the building that wasn't, part of the curriculum staff. And I asked that for a specific reason, one of them being I'm getting ready to put my packet in. I'm slow this year. But how are we doing on volunteers?
I know we have some in our buildings. To the number I don't have at the top right now, I can get that. But the restrictions are basically going out.
Background check.
Background check, and then follow building protocol.
But we're seeing them in the classroom now. We're looking at our staffing report, and we're looking at how can we bring adults both to mentor but just to help in the classroom. It would seem that would be a way to help. So I would just offer to the public, that we do have a program for volunteers to help in the classroom where they're needed, and the building will put them where they're needed the most. And so I would say we need volunteers. It's a time when the community needs to come together, and if you have time that you could spend just reading to kids or helping a new teacher with whatever she needs, whether it's posting a bulletin board or whatever, that's time that she can spend with a child. So I just would hope that the community hears that call is they can go on the website and they can look and see where they can volunteer, and they can register for to be a volunteer and do a background check, and we have a place for them, I believe, right? The second thing is I know the pandemic sidetracked a lot of the things that everybody, not just us, but everybody had envisioned for their future. And I would just offer that it's time for us to re-engage on where we want our kids to be in 2028 and 2030. The kindergarten class this year, in 12 years, we're pushing hard to get them ready to go and qualified in our early learning center, but what do they need in 12 years? And so I think it's time for us to dialogue a little bit about what we think about the future. Is it part of our career program? What can we do there? And our relationship with the Pioneer Center, what could we be doing there? And the example that I would use is, we've got kids who desperately want to do software. They want to build that next gaming program, but truthfully, that's passé. I mean, there's thousands of kids out there trying to become software developers just so they can build a gaming program. However, if you go to any manufacturing plant, there's robots. And every one of those robots requires software development. And every one of those robots requires a mechanic, believe it or not. You may not be working on your Chevy, but you just might be working robotics for the rest of your life. And so I think this kind of a dialogue that it's time for us to, with all the things going on and all the rush and all, but we can't stop visioning our kids' future and trying to think their future next so that they're ready. So that's it. Just I think we need to get back to doing some visioning.
Accepted. All right. So thank you, Mr. Bell. As we've gotten the last few weeks, we're back in the swing of things, classes, clubs, teams, and going back to what you mentioned earlier about our teachers and admin. I know they're all rowing as hard as they can, and the great ship known as USD 453 is moving forward only because they are rowing as fast as they can. And I do appreciate every minute, every one of them give to our students. I know it's not an easy job, but I'm thankful they're doing it. I just wish we had more folks there to help them do what we can. One mentioned that I've seen some buses out there and people are stopping, but there are some folks who still haven't figured out that when the red light is flashing and the sign out says stop, it means stop, please. It's our students, please keep them safe. We've already had some accidents this year and I don't really want anyone else to be hurt for whatever reason. But when the bus sign says stop, please stop. It may be your child. One of the other things too, Mrs. Wells and I got to be participants in the KSB Leaders for Tomorrow program, and we spent 2 days down at West Elk and Fredonia seeing the things that they are doing. They're doing a lot of things that we're doing too, and so I'm kind of excited about that because it is looking forward to what are we doing for the class of 2034 and beyond. Learned a lot, had a lot of good questions, and we'll be talking a little bit more, Dr.
No more meetings for the 2 years.
No. But no, it was good things. It really was. And I was impressed with the things that they are doing. And we're doing a lot of those things already, but it was really good to see that happening across Kansas. And I think that was the benefit of what we did, was to see things happening across Kansas. And a lot of the things we were doing already. And the bottom line, we just got our schedules, so for all of the great fall sports, check your calendars. Go support our Pioneers, because they all need support, not just football, not just volleyball, not just soccer. All of our kids need your support. So I encourage all of you to mark your calendars, and I'll see you out there. So go Pioneers. It's 8:49.